All right, everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and I want to talk about why I think this next coming Conquest with Queen Amidala is going to be one of the most important Conquest cycles in Galaxy of Heroes history, and why I am very nervous for it. I think that this could be a big deciding factor in what Conquest looks like moving forward. I know a lot of you are thinking, Phil, you're crazy. I'm going to explain why. So like, subscribe, comment, let me know your thoughts. Channel members, I do apologize. I posted in the Discord, guys, no video yesterday because my wife is actually away on a bachelorette party. So it's me and the girls. I was hoping to get some work done last night for the channel. And Harper decided that she wanted to stay up till 10 o'clock. So that just did not happen. So I appreciate your guys' patience. I love you all. Let's talk about this Conquest cycle and why it's going to be, I think, the most important in capital that we've had in recent history. So it's not because Queen Amidala is going to be as good as Darth Bane, right? I do not think that. Like, Bane is just, I even think that he's an outlier. I mean, we've had some really big hits in Conquest lately between Bane, Dark Trooper Gideon, Terran Malicos, all really, really good characters. I think they've really done a good job with them. But where I'm more looking at it and saying, yeah, you know what, like, this is why I think this one's going to be so important. Because Queen Amidala breaks the mold from the past few characters that we've had. Even going back to, like, Admiral Trench, you know, the Fury-class Interceptor, they were all things that kind of slotted into these existing factions and functions. That, like, Admiral Trench, yes, he wasn't in the game, but his entire squad was in the game. Terran Malicos with unaligned Force users, they were already in the game. Darth Bane literally goes with any Sith who a lot of players already had in game. Queen Amidala, they're like, oh, well, you're going to need her plus her team that isn't released yet. So right away, it limits the amount of players who want this, who can use this character, because you're also then going to need to go get these characters that aren't even farmable yet. So I think that's one area where I'm kind of nervous about. But the second area that makes me really nervous is the feats. So let's flip over here because I want to share the feats. So this is from the SWGOH event server, right? They kind of broke down these feats. And I just want to pay attention to the global feats. So the challenge path thing we're used to. Defeat 600 B1 battle droids. There's going to be a cheese for that. Like, there's going to be a cheese for this. They're not just going to make, like, there's going to be a way to cheese this. Because they're not like, oh, there's one separatist node that you're going to have to do, 500 times. Like, there's going to be a way to cheese that. The 40 battles with Galactic Republic. This one's actually semi-concerning. When you think of the past 2 years of Galaxy of Heroes, the Galactic Republic faction has kind of really fallen off. That its importance has faded a lot. They really haven't done a whole lot with that faction. Keller and Beck kind of being the most recent addition to it. But you now look and it's like, win 40 battles. A lot of players won't have a Galactic Republic team that could win 40 battles. Right? Because, like, between the Speeder Bike raid and the Crate raid and Rise of the Empire, it's not been a big push for people. Then it's next going down to 20 battles with Keller and Beck and IG-12 and Grogu surviving. Two characters that are brand new and have zero synergy together. Right? Like, it's not even like it's, IG-12 and Grogu and Paz Vizsla surviving. Like a light side Mandalorian thing, which just so happens to be this next feat. So, again, it's just one of these things where another example where Capital Games kind of pushing these new things, like kind of cramming them down our throats. And for a lot of new players, like, those are just not feasible. Defeat 50 enemies with Snap. Like, I think these feats are some of the least player-friendly feats we've had in a while. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, this is kind of scary. This is already a conquest that most players are not nearly as excited for as Darth Bane. People are going to be like, oh, well, you need her for the raid. I think most people are kind of at that point where they're like, oh, like, we'll figure it out without her. Because I got to worry about Gungans too. These feats, I think, like, they should have switched the way they did Darth Bane and Queen Amidala. Like, Queen Amidala's feats should have been a little bit easier to get because Darth Bane's where all the hype is. So, like, I see these feats, I'm like, man, I just don't know that this is going to make a lot of sense, and I feel like players are really going to not participate. And then you even look at some of these ones, like in Sector 5 here. I'm just going to move my face to the center here just to show you. You've got a win with Bo-Katan Mandalore surviving. Win with Darth Bane surviving. Over here in Sector 4, Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. Coming over to Sector 3, Boss Nass, Boba Fett Sina Django. Right there are a ton of feats that are completely reliant on you having kind of the newer characters or later game characters in your account that are capable of surviving. And I feel like that is really, really challenging for people. I really think that this Conquest is going to be so important for them, because if there's a lack of participation and a lack of spending, I have a feeling that it will drive the way that they release future Conquests and the way that they look at this. Because you take a look at the way that these marquee events have been going. They've been a home run, right? They've knocked these out of the park. It's getting players to spend. It's getting players to participate. I think the Darth Bane Conquest had a really good participation. A lot of people really went hard. But I look at this one with these current feats, and I think a lot of people are just going to sit there and be like, why do I even try? There's no reason for me to push. As long as I can get my Darth Bane shards and move on, I don't need to worry. So I think that is where I'm getting nervous, is that if there's a lack of Queen Amidala's at the end of this Conquest, I think they're going to have to take a hard look in the mirror and say, did we maybe push them a little bit too far? Like, I thought Darth Bane's was challenging but doable. I think this one, I even look at my account and think it's a little bit harder to see an easier path to get the 7 max crate. I think I will still be able to push myself to do it, but I definitely think it's not going to be easy, because I look at some of these other feats that are in here, right? Gain momentum 1,000 times, inflict purge, defeat 50 enemies with Inquisitorius units. Like, there's a lot of those feats that are like, oh, you kind of need inflict plague 400 times, There's some feats in here that if you don't have these teams, you got to skip those, and then you're coming down, and you're like, well, I got to skip these too, and all of a sudden those credits add up and cause you to miss crates. So that's why I think this one's going to be so important. Not so much that I think Queen Amidala is going to be more impactful than Bane. Like, I understand with the raid, but I think for a lot of guilds, even if you have that Queen Amidala, if you don't have her team, how do you really get a good score in that raid? But Bane is like this game-changing character, and he's going to be game-changing for a long time unless they kind of like switch him up. And then even like going back to, if we flip back over to the game here, the other thing to think about too, just kind of, looking at like their past couple of Conquest units. You go back to even, Darth Malgus. Darth Malgus, his entire team was in the game, right? Like, they didn't release new Sith Empire characters to go with Darth Malgus. He just slotted into this team. You look at Admiral Trench. I get you're going to say Trench on the bench, but all the characters you use in his team are in the game. Every single one. Dooku, Jango, Newt, Watt. And guess what? They were all Galactic Legend requirements. So you bring Trench in, and it makes sense to level him up because you have everybody else for that team. Let's go to Terran Malicos here. Yes, the unaligned Force users, they're a newer faction, but 2 of them, Seer and Cal, were, requirements for the Jedi Knight Cal Kestis team. You look at Malicos himself, okay, there he is. And then like Fulcrum, Ahsoka Tano, who people might have had her for Territory Wars, but even there's so many other unaligned Force users to throw in this team that it made a lot of sense to get those characters and get Terran Malicos. Go to our Imperial Remnants, right? Again, Scout Trooper, Galactic Legend requirement. And then these guys may be a little bit more obscure, but they've been in the game for so long that a lot of people had them anyway to use with Iden Versio. So again, another team where it's like, okay, one character, Scout Trooper was newer, but he was a Leia requirement, so people farmed him. And then now you go to Darth Bane, who, I mean, everybody had Sith, right? And he's literally like, oh, use him with any other character and he's good. So like, again, a character that you're not required to gear up an entire new faction to use. Whereas now with this Galactic Republic, with, Queen Amidala coming in, we don't know what her full team is yet. We know that 2 of those characters are Master Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, who aren't even in the game. So I think the reason this participation with Queen Amidala could be lower is, again, because, like, you don't even have her team yet. So I think this Conquest could really be, and this is why I think this Conquest with the Conquest Pass and Pass Plus is including Ben Solo shards, because they recognize that most players are not looking forward to this Conquest because the feats are more difficult. All they see is just dollar signs and more work and more work and more work once they even get Queen Amidala. That's why I think this Conquest is going to be a make or break. If participation is lower, Capital Games is going to have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, do we need to adjust the way that we go through Conquest units? Should they really just be a lifter for a current team rather than, hey, we're going to release this character plus 4 new ones? Because like if I'm giving you advice on, do I think it's smarter to invest in the Gungans or Queen Amidala, I'm going to tell you that I think Gungans may be the better investment, because if you miss out on Queen Amidala in these 6 conquests, you're waiting months, or you've got to spend your conquest currency in other events on her. Whereas with the Gungans, they're going to be in the journey guide, and they very potentially have a chance to get the Bo-Katan treatment, where we're going to get them every single month. And if that's the case for Jar Jar, which I really hope it is, I think that will be a big step in the right direction for the game, thus further, I think, reducing the need for Queen Amidala. So I don't know. I've been ranting a little bit about this conquest. I've had a lot to think about it, but I really think it's going to be probably the most important conquest CG's done in a while, because if participation is lower, it's going to be a big sign to them that they need to tone Conquest to recognize that we need it to be accessible for a lot of players in the game, and not just those top-end players like myself, right? Like, I would say that this Conquest, like, okay, it is what it is. But I look at a lot of the accounts who could potentially get Darth Bane in 6 Conquests. This one just made it that much harder. So that's the end of the video. Let me know your thoughts. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.